I remember clearly March 15th, 2019, the day I discovered what truly matters in life. It was supposed to be my sister Emma's wedding day, but it became the day I had to choose between saving 12 children trapped in a Venezuelan cave and keeping the most sacred promise I had ever made. My name is Colonel Sarah Mitchell, and I had served in the U.S. Army Special Forces for nearly 2 decades. I was decorated, respected, and completely devoted to my missions. But that devotion had cost me everything that should have mattered most. I had missed virtually every significant moment in my sister's life, and the guilt was eating me alive from the inside. Standing in Emma's bridal suite at the Grand Georgian Hotel at 10 a.m. that Saturday morning, I watched her adjust the pearl necklace that had belonged to our mother. At 28, my younger sister had grown into a remarkable woman, but I could see the deep anxiety in her green eyes as she looked at me in the ornate mirror. "Sarah, you gave me your sacred oath," she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. "You knelt down in this very hotel 6 months ago and swore on Dad's grave that nothing would keep you away from my wedding." I had made that commitment. The memory was burned into my mind. Emma had just announced her engagement to David, and I felt such overwhelming pain about all the moments I had missed that I literally dropped to one knee right there in the hotel lobby and made her that solemn vow. I felt tortured by guilt because I had spent decades choosing my career over the person who mattered most to me. The weight of all those missed moments was crushing. Every birthday I had spent deployed overseas, every Christmas dinner where my chair sat empty, every late-night phone call where Emma needed her big sister and I was thousands of miles away in some war zone. "I'm here, Em. The ceremony starts at 2 p.m. and I will be standing right beside you when you walk down that aisle." I assured her, though my secure military phone had been buzzing relentlessly in my jacket pocket for the past hour. Emma turned to face me directly, and I saw tears threatening to spill from her eyes. "Do you remember Dad's funeral in October 2015? You were supposed to deliver the eulogy because you were his pride and joy, his decorated daughter. Instead, I stood at that podium completely alone, stumbling through words about a man you barely visited while you were in Afghanistan on some classified operation that couldn't wait even one day." The memory stabbed through me like a knife. I remembered the encrypted message informing me of Dad's massive heart attack. I remembered the impossible choice between flying home to bury my father and completing a counter-terrorism mission targeting a bomb maker who had killed dozens of innocent civilians. I chose duty, and Emma had to handle everything alone. The funeral arrangements, the military honor ceremony, explaining to hundreds of relatives and Dad's old army buddies why his decorated daughter couldn't be bothered to show up for his burial. "Your college graduation in May 2013. I said softly, each word tasting like poison in my mouth. "You graduated magna cum laude from nursing school, top 5% of your class, and I was in Syria tracking weapon smugglers through the desert for 4 straight months. My 21st birthday celebration, 5 consecutive Christmas dinners. When I had pneumonia and was hospitalized for 8 days in critical condition while you were at Fort Bragg, training a new Special Forces unit that you said couldn't wait." Emma's voice remained controlled, but I could see decades of accumulated disappointment behind her composure. 20 years of emergency deployment, Sarah. 2 decades of choosing complete strangers over the person who has loved you unconditionally since the day you left for West Point. She was absolutely right, and the truth of it was suffocating me. I had built my entire identity around being indispensable to the U.S. military. Every mission seemed more urgent than family gatherings, every deployment more critical than personal relationships. While I was saving lives and serving my country around the globe, Emma had been building a beautiful life without me. Graduating with honors, becoming a pediatric intensive care nurse, meeting David at the children's hospital where they both worked, falling in love with a man who actually showed up for her. I had been absent for virtually every milestone that should have mattered to me. My phone buzzed again, this time with an urgent encrypted message from Colonel Marcus Torres, my second in command and closest friend in the unit. Flash priority alert. Catastrophic cave collapse in Venezuelan jungle. 12 children ages 6-14, trapped 200 feet underground in flooding chamber. Structural collapse imminent, rising water levels critical. Venezuelan government formally requesting immediate U.S. Special Forces assistance through State Department emergency channels. Need your team airborne within 2 hours maximum. Children's lives hanging in balance. You're their only hope. I felt the familiar surge of adrenaline mixed with absolute dread, the call to duty that had controlled my entire adult existence. Somewhere in the Venezuelan jungle, 12 innocent children were trapped in complete darkness, probably terrified beyond imagination, possibly dying minute by minute. My team was specifically trained for exactly these scenarios: cave rescues, structural collapses, extraction operations under extreme conditions. We were literally their only realistic hope for survival. But Emma was studying my facial expression with the expertise of someone who had watched me receive emergency calls for decades, and I saw her face change as she recognized the look I always got when duty called. Whatever that message is about, Sarah, the answer is absolutely no, she said, with a firmness I had rarely heard from her. I meant every single word I said 6 months ago when you made me that commitment. If you walk out of this room today, if you choose some emergency over my wedding day, we are finished forever. No more second chances, no more patient understanding, no more forgiveness. I stared at my sister, really seeing her for perhaps the first time in years. She was absolutely radiant in her wedding dress, a vision of happiness and hope that I had almost missed entirely. Again, in exactly 4 hours, she would walk down the aisle to marry David, a kind and patient man who had been consistently present for her while I was deployed around the world saving strangers. I thought to myself, if I leave now, Emma will never forgive me. She means it this time. I can see it in her eyes. I will lose my sister forever, and she's the only family I have left. But I was also thinking about those 12 children trapped underground, scared, and running out of time with each passing minute. I need to understand exactly what's happening with this situation, I said carefully, trying to keep my voice steady and hoping she wouldn't hear the conflict tearing me apart inside. Just one phone call to get the complete tactical assessment. You're going, aren't you? Emma's voice cracked slightly, and I saw something die in her eyes. Even now, even after everything you promised me after swearing on our father's grave in this very hotel, you're going to abandon me again for complete strangers. I stepped into the hallway and immediately called Torres on the secure military line. What he told me was far worse than I had imagined. The 12 children had been on an educational field trip to explore the historical limestone caves near the Colombian border when a 6.2 magnitude earthquake triggered a massive structural collapse. They were trapped in a chamber 200 feet underground with water rising from an underground river system that fed directly into their location. Structural engineers estimated they had maybe 8 hours before the chamber completely flooded and the children drowned. Additionally, the cave system contained old mining explosives from the 1970s that were highly unstable. Any significant vibration could trigger secondary explosions that would kill everyone, including any rescue team. Sarah, we desperately need you leading this operation, Torres said urgently. The Venezuelan Special Forces don't have the training, equipment, or experience for this type of technical extraction. We're literally their only chance of survival. But even as Torres briefed me on the critical tactical situation, I kept thinking about Emma's ultimatum. I thought about the way her voice broke when she said we'd be finished forever. I realized that for the first time in my entire military career, I was genuinely torn between duty and family, and I honestly wasn't sure which should win. I'm coming, I told Torres, making the decision that felt inevitable, despite everything inside me screaming that it was wrong. But brief the entire team thoroughly on extraction procedures. I want every possible scenario rehearsed and contingency plans in place before we rappel into that cave system. I returned to Emma's suite with my heart pounding so violently I could hear it echoing in my ears. She was sitting on the elegant sofa now, her wedding dress carefully arranged around her, staring out the window at the beautiful March afternoon. "Emma, there are 12 children trapped in a collapsed cave system in Venezuela," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "They're going to drown or suffocate if someone doesn't extract them within the next 8 hours. Emma's face went completely white. "Children? How old are they?" I could see her internal struggle playing out across her features. As a pediatric intensive care nurse, she understood the value of young lives better than most people on Earth. She had dedicated her entire career to caring for critically ill and injured children, often working 16-hour shifts, to save kids who reminded her of the patients I was describing. But she also understood the devastating pattern of my choices over the past decades. Ages 6 to 14, the exact same ages as the children you take care of every single day at the hospital. I said, hating myself for manipulating her emotions, but knowing it was the truth. "Emma, I have to go. But I swear to you on everything I hold sacred, I will find a way to complete this mission and make it back for at least part of your wedding celebration." Emma closed her eyes and remained silent for what felt like an eternity. When she opened them, her voice was completely calm and absolutely final. "Then we're done, Sarah. Don't come back to the reception tonight. Don't call me next week with explanations and apologies. Don't send flowers or try to make this right later. We are finished as sisters." The finality in her voice terrified me more than any combat situation I had ever faced, but I felt trapped by the decision I had already made. I kissed her forehead. She didn't respond or even acknowledge the gesture, and left what I believed might be the last time I would ever see my sister. 4 hours later, I was in a UH-60 Blackhawk helicopter, flying low over the incredibly dense Venezuelan jungle canopy. The humidity was overwhelming even inside the aircraft, and I could smell the rich, earthy scent of tropical vegetation mixed with the metallic odor of our specialized rescue equipment. My team of 8 specialists was methodically checking gear and reviewing the structural engineering reports that had been transmitted during our flight from the U.S. base in Colombia. The cave entrance was a jagged, menacing hole in a limestone cliff face, surrounded by emergency vehicles from the Venezuelan Military Red Cross and local rescue services. I could hear the ominous sound of rushing water echoing from deep underground, and the air coming from the cave mouth smelled of wet limestone fear, and something else I couldn't identify. Maybe death. Local officials briefed us quickly through interpreters. The children's voices had been heard from approximately 200 feet down about 2 hours ago, but communication had been lost and water levels were rising at an alarming rate due to the underground river system that had been disrupted by the earthquake. We established our rappel lines and began the treacherous descent into complete darkness. My headlamp beam cut through the humid, dusty air as we lowered ourselves deeper into the earth. The walls were slick with moisture and covered in a thin layer of limestone dust that made everything slippery and dangerous. I could hear the ominous creaking and groaning of unstable rock formations above us, sounds that indicated the entire structure could collapse again at any moment. About 150 feet down, we encountered the first major obstacle, a massive debris field from the original collapse that we had to carefully navigate without triggering further cave-ins or setting off the old mining explosives. When we finally reached the chamber where the children were trapped, the scene shattered my heart completely. 12 terrified kids were huddled together on a rocky ledge about 4 feet above the rapidly rising water level. They were cold, exhausted, and several were visibly injured from falling rocks during the initial collapse. The youngest, a little girl who couldn't have been older than 6, was clutching a mud-stained family photograph against her chest. "American soldiers," one of the older boys called out in Spanish, his voice echoing off the cave walls. "Are you here to save us? We've been waiting so long." "Yes, we're here to get every one of you out safely," I replied in Spanish, though I was obsessively calculating the time constraints in my head. It was already 4:30 p.m., Emma's wedding ceremony had started 30 minutes ago, 1 to 500 miles away, and I wasn't there. I had broken my sacred commitment to her again. We began the painstaking, dangerous process of evacuating the children one by one. Each child had to be individually secured in a special rescue harness and carefully lifted through the narrow, unstable passages, while we navigated around debris that could shift and crush us at any moment. The water was rising approximately 8 inches per hour, and we could hear more rocks shifting and groaning ominously overhead with every movement we made. I was helping secure Maria, a 7-year-old girl with a badly injured leg, when I heard Torres's voice crackle over the radio. "Sarah, we've got a serious problem. Seismic sensors are showing increased instability. We might have another major collapse incoming." Just as he finished speaking, a secondary collapse suddenly blocked our primary escape route. Tons of limestone and debris crashed down with a sound like thunder, completely filling the passage we had used to descend. The noise was absolutely deafening, and for several terrifying minutes the air was so thick with choking dust that we couldn't see or breathe properly. Torres were completely trapped down here. I radioed to my second-in-command, who was coordinating the surface operations. "Main escape route is totally blocked. We need to locate an alternate passage immediately, or everyone dies down here." "Copy that. Ground-penetrating radar is showing a possible secondary shaft about 50 meters east of your position. Can you reach it?" We fought our way through the debris and rising water to reach the secondary passage Torres had identified. It was narrow, unstable, but it was our only hope. However, as we approached the critical junction that would lead us to safety, Sergeant Williams suddenly stopped and raised his hand. "Colonel, we have a major problem." Williams said, his voice tight with fear. "There's an old anti-personnel mine blocking the passage. Looks like it's from the 1970s mining operations. The thing is completely unstable. Any vibration could set it off." My heart sank as I examined the device with my headlamp. It was an old Soviet-era mine, probably left over from the various conflicts that had plagued this region for decades. The casing was corroded, the trigger mechanism was exposed, and it was positioned exactly where we needed to pass to reach safety. Worse, the rising water was slowly but steadily approaching the mine's position. If the water reached it, the pressure changes could detonate it and kill everyone. "Torres, we need an EOD specialist down here immediately." Williams radioed to the surface. "Negative," came Torres's reply. "Nearest EOD team is 6 hours away, and the cave structure won't hold that long. Water levels are rising too fast." I stared at the mine for a long moment, my mind racing through options. Then I realized something that made my blood run cold. This wasn't just any mine. I had seen devices exactly like this during my deployment in Afghanistan in 2009, during a specialized assignment that most of my current team didn't know about. "Stand back, everyone," I said quietly, kneeling down next to the mine. "I can handle this." "Sarah, what are you talking about?" Torres's voice crackled over the radio. "Afghanistan, 2009. I spent 4 months attached to an explosive ordnance disposal unit in Helmand province. I was cross-trained on Soviet-era devices exactly like this one." I was already pulling out my combat knife and a small penlight. "This is a PMN-2 anti-personnel mine. I've disarmed dozens of them." The entire team went completely silent. Sergeant Williams, who had served with me for 6 years, stared at me in shock. "Colonel, you never mentioned you had EOD training." "It was classified, and it was never relevant until right now. I was studying the mine's mechanism, carefully identifying the pressure plate, the spring assembly, and the detonator housing. Everyone needs to move back at least 20 meters and remain absolutely silent. Any vibration could trigger this thing." What followed were the most terrifying 15 minutes of my life. The mine was even more unstable than I had initially thought. Decades of moisture and corrosion had weakened the safety mechanisms, and the slightest wrong move would kill everyone in the cave. I had to work by feel in many cases, as the headlamp beam could potentially heat the metal enough to cause expansion and trigger the device. My hands were steady, but sweat was dripping steadily into my eyes as I carefully disconnected the primary firing circuit. The silence from my team was absolute. I could hear nothing but the sound of rising water and my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. One by one, I disabled the safety interlocks, isolated the detonator, and carefully removed the pressure plate assembly. When I finally heard the soft click that indicated the mine was fully disarmed, I actually felt my legs go weak with relief. The passage was clear. "It's done," I announced to my team. "The mine is neutralized. We can proceed." The cheer that went up from my team echoed through the cave. Sergeant Williams clapped me on the shoulder. "Colonel, you just saved all our lives. Nobody else could have done that." Torres's voice came over the radio, filled with relief and admiration. "Sarah, that was absolutely incredible. You're the only reason any of us are going to make it out of here alive." It was at that exact moment, with my team looking at me like I was their personal savior, that I made the decision that would end my military career. "Oh, Torres," I said into my radio, my voice cutting through the celebration. "I'm officially transferring operational command to you. Get everyone home safely." The silence that followed was deafening. My entire team stared at me in complete shock and disbelief. "Sarah, what the hell are you talking about?" Torres's voice was filled with confusion. "You just proved you're the most essential person on this entire operation. We need you now, more than ever. You have the training and experience to complete this extraction," I replied firmly. "The mine is disarmed. The passage is clear, and you know exactly how to evacuate the remaining children. I've prepared you for this." Sergeant Williams stepped forward, his face flushed with anger and betrayal. "This is complete betrayal. You just saved all our lives, proved that nobody else could have done what you did, and now you're abandoning us? This makes absolutely no sense." I looked around at my team. 8 specialists who had followed me into countless dangerous situations, who had just watched me risk my life to save theirs. They were staring at me like I had lost my mind, and maybe I had. "I have to go," I said simply. "My sister is getting married today, and I made her a promise that I can't break. Not again." "Colonel, this is insane," Williams continued. "Those kids still need to be evacuated. The mission isn't complete." "The mission will be completed under Torres's command. I've given you the tools and cleared the path. Now you finish it." I was already moving toward the disarmed passage. "That's an order." The next hour was a blur of desperate activity as I helped establish the evacuation route through the secondary shaft. We managed to get 8 of the 12 children safely to the surface, including Maria with her family photograph. The remaining 4 were secured and ready for extraction. Torres' 8 children are safe on the surface. The remaining 4 are ready for extraction. You have complete operational control. Complete this mission and bring everyone home. "Sarah, please don't do this," Torres pleaded over the radio. "You're walking away at the moment of your greatest triumph. This makes no sense." "It makes perfect sense to me," I replied. "For the first time in my life, I'm choosing my family over my duty." The climb out of that cave was the longest 45 minutes of my existence. Every part of me wanted to stay and see the mission through to completion, but I kept thinking about Emma's face when she said we'd be finished forever. I had already proven that I could save lives and be a hero. Now I needed to prove that I could be a sister. The helicopter flight to the Colombian border took 30 minutes. The military transport to Atlanta took 5.5 hours due to headwinds. The drive from Atlanta to Georgia took 4 hours through the empty night. I arrived at the Grand Georgian Hotel at 6:30 a.m. on Sunday morning, still in my torn and muddy combat fatigues, completely exhausted and terrified that Emma would refuse to see me. I found Emma and David in the hotel lobby, both still in their wedding clothes, looking like they hadn't slept at all. When Emma saw me, her face went through a series of emotions: surprise, anger, hope, and something I couldn't identify. "You came back," she whispered. "I kept my commitment," I said. "I know I missed the ceremony, but I'm here. I chose you, Emma. I finally chose you over everything else." "Are those children safe?" she asked. "Torres completed the mission successfully. All 12 children were rescued. But Emma, you need to understand what I did. I abandoned my command after proving I was the only person who could save everyone. I walked away from my moment of greatest success to come back to you. Emma stepped forward and hugged me tightly. I'm so proud of you, she said. Not for disarming the mine, for coming home to me. David extended his hand with a smile. Welcome to the family, Sarah, for real this time. The investigation that followed was brutal and complicated. The military prosecutors struggled with my case because my actions were simultaneously heroic and inexcusable. I had saved the entire rescue team by disarming a mine that no one else could have handled, but then I had abandoned my post at the moment my leadership was most crucial. During the hearings, Sergeant Williams provided crucial testimony. Colonel Mitchell saved all our lives by disarming that mine. Her abandoning us immediately afterward was devastating and confusing, but I realized later that she had given us everything we needed to succeed. She turned an impossible situation into a manageable one, then trusted us to finish the job. And we did. Torres testified. Without Colonel Mitchell's specialized EOD skills, everyone in that cave would have died. Her decision to leave was against all military protocol, but it came only after she had ensured the mission could succeed. The children were saved because of her actions, not despite them. In July 2019, I sat across from General Patricia Hayes for the final verdict. Colonel Mitchell, General Hayes said gravely, your actions present the most complex case this review board has ever encountered. You simultaneously displayed extraordinary heroism and committed serious dereliction of duty. You proved yourself absolutely essential to the mission's success, then immediately abandoned it. The contradiction is unprecedented. Yes, ma'am, I accept full responsibility. You will receive a formal reprimand. You retain your rank and pension, but you are ordered into mandatory retirement within 60 days. Your actions saved lives, but they cannot be excused under military law. By September 2019, I was retired and living near Emma and David. I was there when Emma called to tell me she was pregnant. I attended every appointment, helped with the nursery, and was in the delivery room when my nephew James was born on August 15, 2020. Now, nearly 2 years later, I spend every Sunday morning at Emma's kitchen table watching her feed James while David grills breakfast outside. Last Sunday, Emma asked me if I ever regretted leaving the army. I regret missing so many moments in your life, I said honestly. But I don't regret choosing you over that mission. I don't regret finally putting family first. This afternoon, I'm teaching 18-month-old James to kick a soccer ball in their backyard while his parents watch from the porch. He laughs every time the ball rolls away from his tiny feet, and I'm here for this ordinary, precious moment. Looking back, I understand something I missed during my entire military career. Sometimes the greatest act of service isn't completing the mission. It's ensuring others can complete it without you then choosing to be present for the people who matter most. I did save lives by disarming that mine, and I'm proud of that moment. But the decision I'm most proud of is what came next. Walking away from my greatest triumph to keep the most important promise I ever made. The children in Venezuela survived because I cleared the path for my team to succeed. Emma had only one wedding day, one chance for her sister to choose her over everything else. I made the right choice, even though it cost me everything I thought I wanted. That's the lesson I learned. Love requires presence, not just heroic gestures. Family means showing up especially when duty calls you elsewhere. Sometimes the most important mission is simply being there for the people who matter most when they need you most.